My name is Francis Gillis-Weber and my research topic is on modeling localized conceptualizations and annotations in a multilingual ontology. My supervisor is Professor C. Maria Keat. For the agenda, we'll briefly look at the definition of multilingual ontologies, then move on to the problems that are currently exist with multilingual ontologies, then consider the research proposal and the expected outcomes. So what is a multilingual ontology? It is a model of a subject domain described using two or more natural languages and encoded using Web Ontology Language, otherwise known as OWL. So if we had to consider the T box and the A box, where both could be separated into two layers, conceptual and linguistic. In the conceptual layer, there would be classes, which would be named entities identified by URIs, and then in the linguistic layer, there would be annotations, which would be language tag strings for each of the classes. If we look at an example, the class would be that of dog, and then each of the annotations in each language as shown in the linguistic layer. What is the purpose of ontologies? They're used for knowledge representation in the field of AI, and they are primarily used, they're also highly valuable in question answering systems and used for verbalization. And with RDL, you're able to reason and infer. What is the purpose of multilingual ontologies? Language is a symbol of social identity, and a society's interpretation of concepts and knowledge of the world may differ to that of another society's interpretation. However, when conceptualizing an ontology, there's typically one primary language, and then the remaining languages are translated. If you consider this within the context of the European Union and South Africa, which have 24 and 11 official languages, this becomes problematic with the conceptualizations. There's not a one-to-one mapping from one language to the other when being used for verbalization and question answering. If we look at conceptualization, just visualize it between two languages. Here we've got a photo of a river, and we can define this river as a concept space. And if we had to now model this in OWL, the subclasses or the hierarchy would look as follows. And then if we now had to consider the same concept space, but this time for French, here there would be two subclasses, where for English there is only one. And here we say the concept space is more granular. So the problem here is when you are building the ontology, which conceptualization do you choose? Do you go for the English or do you do the French? If you're an ontology engineer who is only English speaking, you might not know of the French conceptualization. Then just as an example of the impact of this when translating, so this is in French, now translated into English, we see that there's a duplicate of the two river terms. Then moving on to annotations. So for annotations, if we had to annotate a person and give them, for example, a label of Bill Gates, that would be unchanged for English. However, in Xhosa, it would become Bill Gates. Then if we also look at grammatical gender, here we've got an object property, and there's two for English and French, and there's only one label. But for the Spanish language, there is grammatical gender, which means that depending on the domain, the label of the object property would change. Looking at related works, there are mapping models such as SCOS, which can align one monolingual ontology to another monolingual ontology where both languages are different. Can also use the language model known as Ontologies Lemon, which adds a linguistic information to each class and property, and here you're able to capture multilingualism as well. The problem statement is that there's no model currently available which allows for multiple conceptualizations of a subject domain within the same ontology, where a natural language may have an overlapping concept space to that of another language. And then just looking at the linguistic layer, which is annotations, and when our ontology is annotated using a natural language which has grammatical features similar to English, if a class is associated with the axioms beyond that of the subclass axiom, and the surface text of the annotations of the affected entities and axioms should change, then it is not currently possible for this to be done. So from here, the following research questions were identified. I'll focus on research question 1. How can multiple conceptualizations of the same concept space be modeled be modeled according to language within the same ontology in a way that also ensures that a language-specific conceptualization can be modularized for reuse in other ontologies. The proposed research approach to research question 1 is to create a mapping model which maps within the conceptual layer. This would allow for multiple representations in the same ontology, where there would be both a language-independent representation and one or more localized representations, where a localized representation would be language-specific. The model will then be formalized in OWL. Thereafter, we'll be able to develop algorithms to generate bridging axioms between the different representations to create a compiled multilingual ontology. Then within an ontology development environment or an OWL application, the representations can be visualized as a single ontology or filtered. If we had seen an example of this, this is a wireframe of a proposed ontology development environment, and here the classes have been filtered on English and French. So the expected outcomes, focusing on research question 1, it would allow for multiple representations of the same concept space to be modeled, each specific to a natural language. The result is that an ontology engineer will be able to develop a multilingual ontology that is language independent on the conceptual layer. These are my references. Thank you.